In prevention, we are all leaders. Whether you're leading a nationwide prevention initiative, facilitating statewide prevention community, you're a coalition coordinator, or a one-person shop, you are a prevention leader. How we show up and how we engage with others to create positive change takes all types of leadership. So sit back and enjoy these conversations with your fellow prevention leaders from across the globe who are sharing their lessons learned, best practices, and strategies for success. Welcome to the Prevention Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Clausen. So honored to have you with us today. Today, we've got a team that has strong desire in their hearts to reach out to at-risk youth, reaching out with support, encouragement, prevention services, community resources, and most of all, showing them the unconditional love they deserve. Hub City Outreach Center is an organization that grew from the compassion that a few prevention educators possessed for youth in the community. The organization has the desire to provide programs that will help shape the youth into the world changers that we know they can be. Hub City Outreach Center's holistic approach allows their teams and volunteers to work towards meeting the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of our youth. They truly believe in empowerment through prevention. Y'all, I just got chills reading that intro. And I'll tell you what, we've got a crew here, some amazing, amazing human beings doing amazing work, and I am pumped. So without further ado, hey, Adam, Jonathan, Jacqueline, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Hey.
Woohoo!
Right? Can you feel that energy, folks?
I know, right?
This is going to be a great conversation. But hey, let's start things off. I would love to just hear a little bit about each of y'all, a little bit of background. How'd you make it into prevention? What do you say, Jacqueline? You want to get things started?
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you for that. So my name is Jacqueline Delgado. I'm the co-founder and vice president at Hub City Outreach Center. And I'm honestly always surprised that I have that to be able to say, because prevention was something that was really interesting, and it was something new whenever I first got into it. I actually got into it because in my last semester of college at Texas Tech University, Reckham, I was supposed to actually test out of my foreign language, and I wasn't able to. So I had to take an extra semester. And that really bummed me out. And so I took this internship with a professor that I had been a teaching assistant for, and I took a couple of his classes, and he was just so passionate, and I really enjoyed, talking to him and everything that, he said. And he was starting this internship, and I was like, all right, well, I got a whole lot of time on my hands. So I took this internship at a entity that actually is not in existence any longer. And I had the pleasure of meeting Adam and Jonathan there. And I'd like to say that's the main reason I stuck around, because they're just they're just outrageously got so much energy and just so knowledgeable, and it's just great being around them. But I got into this internship, right? And I started in the Prevention Resource Center. So that was all the data stuff. So I got a little background knowledge, like data knowledge, before actually getting into the nitty gritty, which I think was helpful. Not my favorite, but helpful and more interesting now that I know more about it. And then I started doing the youth prevention services. So I was able to shadow Jonathan, and it was just so fun to be able to go into these schools in different community settings and take over their usual schedule and implement, these life skills that, it's an interactive conversation, and then we play a game and they're having a blast and they have no idea that they're learning about themselves. And then it's different. And one of my favorite things about prevention too was that it was different every session, like each class, and then different every day and different every week. And, young people got a lot of energy, and it was just perfect for, who I am and what I like to do. And that's really how I got, involved, and then really why I stuck with prevention.
Awesome. Would love to dig in more, but we've got two other wonderful folks with us in the room. Jonathan, what's your background? How'd you end up where you are?
Well, depending on who's asking, I can't answer that question. But sorry, but my lawyer says I can say this. So I'm from San Diego, California, and I had just moved. I'd moved back to. I'd finished graduating from LCU and I moved back to San Diego, and so I was trying to get into a master's degree program. I applied for marriage and family therapy. I applied for counseling, and then lo and behold, the one I got into was back here in Lubbock. So I had to move all the way back to the place I had just moved from, and I worked for a federal halfway house. So I worked with inmates that had come out of the federal system. And then I was a mental health tech for a little bit at Lubbock County. So I was dealing with crisis care, that kind of stuff. And then I had it just happened. I applied for a job and I got it. And, I have a background. I've done ministry, so I'm used to working with kids. I've worked with kids in San Diego, Texas, Florida, and a few places overseas. So it's not, so going in and talking and acting like an idiot is my thing. I can do that. So we got in, and then, later on met Jacqueline and Megan, who's one of our co-founders. She started a couple of days after I did. And so for me, I like some of the people I grew up with didn't make the best decisions. And Southern California has a history of street gangs and drugs. So I've seen a lot of that. And sometimes a lot of the laws in California are, especially then, very tough on those things. So you grew up with a mentality of, if you're going to do these things, you need to be very sneaky or not do it at all. And working here in Lubbock, some of the kids we'd work with, they would, the decisions they were making, I'm like, it was so, they couldn't even conceptualize that what they were doing was illegal or wrong. You know what I mean? So not even just whether it's bad for your health, but they couldn't even conceptualize it. But also, they were growing up in a time where, they were starting to do the legalization of marijuana, where more the medical marijuana, whereas, I was born in the 80s. So that came out, it was tough to get a medical marijuana card when you get what I'm saying? And so for me, when we started our own organization, it was, I wanted to approach my involvement to it is I want to talk to those kids and bring something to this community that I wish I would have had. Because I do also see, having also worked with inmates and residents here in Lubbock, it's not that big of a leap from one poor decision to incarceration. Only difference, though, in San Diego, it's a big city. You can move up to LA, so if you have a history of criminal behavior, there's other opportunities out there for you. But if you're in Lubbock, you don't have that many opportunities to fall back on if you make a poor mistake. And so that's where my passion is. I don't want kids to go down a path that they don't have to, or I don't want them to go down the path and be ignorant of what's down there.
Passion, caring. I dig it. Y'all's just energy. Just can't help but say, we got to talk. We got to do stuff together. We got to work together. Y'all are awesome. But last but not least, Adam, man, I'm dying to hear your story. I'm dying to hear.
Yeah. So it's, all right. I started off, I got my degree in electronic media and communications, and I worked a little bit in television, worked in radio for a bit. And when I got into social services, I started in LA, made my way to Seattle, pit stop in Eugene, and then went over to North Dakota to stay with a buddy. And I got a job doing camera
it was Hero Cam and Game Cam for Beck Sports broadcast for the college and high school games there for basketball and uh, doing. I was helping what was it was a public radio station. They just got their license, so I was helping them do their thing, and I was running a podcast up there. It was called Retro Rewind. It no longer you can find old clips
Nice.
from SoundCloud, but we stopped doing it just because I was also working at a kitchen, just trying to make money, man. And I got sick and tired of North Dakota. I came back down to Texas, and I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas, which is more of a hill country, southern part from where I'm at now. Got a job at the same place that Jacqueline and Jonathan were working at, or Jacqueline became an intern. And I'm going to be honest with you. I had always worked with Child Protective Services with kids in care. Just kind of like a summer camp feeling, not so much like, hey, I'm really passionate about kids, coming in care and working with them. Is more of like, dude, I just want to play basketball with you and dodgeball and, just do goofy stuff. But, after working with the kids, I think that probably sparked the passion of working with youth on a different level, because we'd see kids coming into care that parents were addicted. Parents had a dependency to a chemical. Kids were coming into care and just destroying homes. And so when I applied and got this job, my title was the director of the Prevention Resource Center for Region 1. I would collect and disseminate data through 41 counties. So I'd travel, kind of the traveling salesman, right? I got the briefcase and I think of old Gil from The Simpsons, right? Oh boy, old Gil's going to make a good sale today. How can I sell prevention to a very conservative town in West Texas, when the culture is kind of like, head in the sand, that we don't have a problem. And so you look at the data and it's like, well, the county above you, county south of you, to the left and right are issuing MIPs, but you don't have any. And their response sometimes is like leaning back. You can hear the chair, hands over the gut. Well, depends on the kid, right? And that kind of, it sparked the interest more, and just getting into it and learning stories. I'm a people guy, right? From my office, I'm a people person. I deal with the people. I enjoy working with people. I'm a community guy, and so I look at the numbers and I'm like, okay, we can look at numbers and say this is the report, 27%, whatever, but actually the faces of the people, because these people have kids. These people are sons, daughters, parents who maybe have lost that relationship or lost somebody to an overdose. And so just gathering more of that qualitative approach, man, that really started fueling the fire more, right? And when the organization, we all left that organization, I remember they came to the house, my house, and they were talking about like, hey man, we need to be doing something, right? We need to be doing something. And it was funny because I broke away. I actually packed up my Jeep and I drove out to California and became a handyman up in the mountains of Sequoia in Wilsonia, which is a 100-year-old log cabin village in Sequoia National Park. I mean, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to try something, reinvent yourself. So I was like chopping 300-foot sugar pines down. I was working on 100-year-old septic, systems. I was just a handyman where bears are walking around. And I remember I got I just got some signal on my phone, and it was Jonathan that called me, and he was just like, "Hey, brother, man, how's the mountains or whatever?" And it was just, just kind of just, hey, how's it going? How's life? And I asked about, hey, did you guys ever get that organization going you guys were talking about? He was like, yeah, we're actually doing stuff right now. And I was like, could you guys use some help? And I mean, it was like perfect timing, because at that point, I'm a city guy by heart. And so like I can play the part and look cool and all, but I'm like super clumsy, like Tim Allen, right? Just on a rickety scaffold, and I'm like the look like Chris Farley trying to paint window shutter and the scaffold breaks and there's honey on me and the bear comes, and so I ended up packing my Jeep up at the time, and I drove back from California, came back to Lubbock, and got a job in residential construction because I didn't want to work in radio anymore. And from there, I got a job working for the state MHMR, or the MHMR here in Lubbock. Are you familiar with MHMR?
Tell me more
So
about
they
it.
changed the name because so it's the mental health, mental retardation for this region, but they don't. That's their state name, MHMR. They go by another entity because they're trying to stay away from the R word. And so I was
Mhm,
running a
mhm.
coalition for reducing substance use among adolescents, and I got plugged in with these guys down there in the Brady Bunch boxes. For this nonprofit, man, and you should hear the story. I mean, Jacqueline and Jonathan. I mean, it was just I kind of showed up and I was like, "Hey, I'm here. Use me. What can I do?" And but I'll let them tell you, man. It's a pretty awesome story.
I mean, I'm just hearing just motivated people that care about youth and care about community and want to get out there and make a difference. And y'all aren't afraid of some hard work. Yeah, we've been hinting at the organization. Who wants to tell me about how Hub City Outreach Center came to be? I want to hear this story. I've been dying to hear it.
I'll jump right in for that. So yeah, Jonathan, Adam, myself, and Megan, we were working at this entity, and there's a couple of us that had some health problems, so we really relied on the insurance there, and we wanted to do. I was getting ahead of myself. We really wanted to do a great job and really liked what we were doing. And the entity was doing some things that they really shouldn't have been doing. And we came to find these things through various avenues, like, you know, um, not being able to access our insurance that they're taking money out of our checks for, or, asking us to do things that we wouldn't do because they're not ethical. Um, Always wondering why there wasn't enough funds for us to do the things that are allocated in our budget type thing. And it was just, we loved what we were doing. We loved who we were doing it with, but we hated who we were doing it for. And we just knew that, there's no way that this entity was going to be able to stick around and do what they have continued to do for far too long. And, I applaud my other three co-founders for being just amazing and being willing to leave an entity that was doing unethical things, because it's hard to leave something that you love doing, right? Like, you're going to miss the kids, you're going to miss the site representatives that you're talking to, all the fun events that you're putting on, and just the unique opportunity that you have to interact with the community. And so it was hard for us to leave, but when we did, we started doing pilot programming at another local nonprofit. We also were driving out to some other counties to do some pilot testing for some of the site reps who wanted us. Like, they didn't care that we left. They were like, well, will you still come do these things? And we were, trained, and we had the resources, and we had the motivation and the passion to do it. And so we were doing those things, collecting the data, and really just preparing for the opportunity to come where we were able to, solidify and start the organization, get the 501c status, and have enough support behind us for when the time comes that the grants were available, the state grants. We wrote them. The four of us, only having worked grants, never actually wrote any. We were awarded two multi-million-dollar grants, and we had just started the organization, but we know them like the back of our hand, right? It's
Mhm, mhm.
it was pretty remarkable, and just blessed that these are the people that we all happen to meet and be at the same place at the same time for a very important reason.
Yeah, I'd say I think she left out she's very humble about it, but I say OJT. We all had full-time gigs, right? Because bills got to get paid, and so we all were working for different organizations, just doing our thing. But in the evenings, we were going over to it was called Lubbock Impact in Lubbock, where it's kind of a soup kitchen, but there's so many different resources that are for the community that folks would come out on Wednesday night. Well, they have youth there. And so we were going to there where the youth were at and running programs, going to sites on our own. I mean, using our own gas. And we never even thought twice of like, dude, like, man, I'm super tired. Like work week really got me. It was like you're looking at the clock, right? It's like being in school. All of a sudden, 5 o'clock hits. Whoo, get in your car, and I'm driving down because I want to work with some youth. I want to do this, and I mean, just really, really getting it going, and that was the part, right? Like some of us had 2 or 3 jobs. Jonathan, I think, were you starting your PhD program or while you were doing that?
No, I was working at the jail, and I was working at the boys ranch.
The Texas Boys, it's a Texas Girls and Boys Ranch, which is a foster placement agency. And so, like, yeah, we were all working, man, but doing HCOC in the background and never thinking twice, like, man, I'm burnt out, or man, this is too much. It was just, can I get more? Can we get more? Because we're also running events. I mean, they were having huge events where 200 to 300 families, like people were coming out for a Halloween event at a Boys and Girls Club. And the only funding we had was like, hey, we all got paid on Friday, and maybe we got a community partner to donate, a couple $100 bills or maybe some food or something. And I mean, we just did it. And then, so yeah, just wanted to add that part.
That just comes right back to so many things that I've learned over my life, and that when you're working in your passion, you have that energy, you have that drive to keep working after that long work week, to jump in your Jeep and head on down there, because your passion is what fuels you. And the more we all can work within our passion, the more energy, the more impact we will have on this world. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, those early days. I feel like that startup phase could be its own episode altogether. The stories, the lessons learned, because that OJT, like, y'all learned a lot. I can only imagine. But let's fast forward a few years to Hub City Outreach Center today. What y'all got going on?
Well, so right now, so tomorrow, the organization is, so one of the things so there were things we weren't able to do at the organization we were at before. That when we started working at Lubbock Impact, Megan and Jack kind of worked together, and they built a clothing closet. Lubbock Impact had a clothing closet, but we built one for our own because we were working with kids. And so they built one over there, shoe closet, books, all of that. Well, once we got grant funded, um, Megan and Jack got together, and we have a room here that has clothing for, families that have been, for whatever reason, maybe in need of stuff, and it's clothes that kids will wear. And so even just tomorrow, they're doing one that's going to be hosted here at the building for community members. Because part of one of the things we wanted to do when we got the grants was to take a holistic approach to prevention education, and that starts with helping your community. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It helps to meet those base needs, and for some of the schools we're in, having clothes, it can make a big deal. For me and Adam, we both work with kids in foster care. We've had kids pull from a house just because they were wearing the same clothes day after day. But some of us don't have those opportunities. So this event they're doing tomorrow, we've done it every year, I believe, since we've been grant funded, for for families. And so that's one part of what we're doing. That's how we're impacting the community, reducing risk factors. Where we are also, so we have reached and presented to, this includes some of our curriculum, youth that we work with, that we do evidence-based practices with, just presentations, activities, community. So since we were grant funded, which was about 2.5 years ago, we have reached over 20,000 people.
Cue the round of applause there. And
I know, right?
Jaw drop moment. That is amazing.
And that and Lubbock is a county of 300 or so thousand people. So that 20,000, that's something. And then if you taking and that's with COVID, that's with COVID. So imagine without the limitations that COVID brought, how many more kids we could reach out to. So where we are right now. So this last year we added a new county. It's called Terry County, which is a county to the west of here. And so we're actually starting to do some programming with kids in a whole different county. And so it took a few years, but we're now expanding outside our influence outside of Lubbock. Me and Adam have actually
well, that was one of our pilot programs
last fall.
Right, that was one of Terry. So Brownfield is city. That was one of our pilot programs that we ran before we got funded, and we told them like, "Hey, we ever find funding, we're coming back for you guys." And it took us with two years. We finally got an amendment made with the HHS, and we got approved for Terry County as of September of last year. So we called up the chief JPO. He's like, "Hey, I got some news for you. We're coming to a theater near you." And so being able to work with their youth, because it's such a need in their community, was awesome. And so it's like, we didn't forget about you. So yeah, just want to share that little deal with Terry County.
Yeah, it's a blessing, and and some of those same folks we helped with before with the probation office, they're wanting to work with us some more now. I mean, me and Adam had lunch with them a week ago, and so we're looking to be able to go back and impact a place we did our pilot program in. And so we're working in the community here. We're doing stuff in the schools. And what was it? So during COVID, we got some funding to provide essentials and hygiene. So we when we had to go, everybody had to go home. Me and Adam had an idea, and we just kind of went after it. It got some funding, and then early last year,
I think it was the second day
we got the funding.
Yeah, I think it was like the second day we were home, and some of us don't like being home. The second day, I was like, dude, we got to do something, man. Because a lot of our work is done in the schools. Things shut down. We got measures to meet. We also want to impact community, and that was just, man, that was an opportunity. Like just being able to. It was. What did we do? It was. So we received. How much was the funding for? It was.
So we applied twice in that summer, and the first grant was for $4,500, and the next was $4,500, and then we got about $1,000 worth of donations.
Mm-hmm. And it was good. It was called, because I presented on this for a conference we had in Texas. It was called Going Back to the Basics. It was actually Jonathan and I, we presented, and my thing was, I called it X's and O's because I'm a big football guy. I like sports, and the idea was this: up until COVID, agencies, organizations were running like the triple option, right? Like, I mean, very fancy plays because they've been moving for so long. They had all the key players. When COVID hit, you couldn't run that stuff because people weren't showing up because the uncertainty. And so the thing we had to look at was, okay, well, how can we impact families with prevention, but we can't do what we normally can do, run these fancy plays, do these fancy events. It was going back to the basics. So that $4,500, we were able to provide cleaning house supplies, toothbrushes, toothpaste. I mean, just hygiene products, diapers, formula, financial assistance for utilities because, people have been out of a job. You got to keep that electricity on. If you got kids, you got to have hot water. That's the decent thing that, us humans that we need is running water, electricity, like the essentials. And so we were able to go back to the basics, and somebody asked me, he said, how does providing a kid shoes prevent them from using drugs? Great question. Well, our holistic approach has always been this. When we work with the youth, if the kid is not listening, it came down to it. There was several situations where we would find kids and then we'd pull them to the side and say, hey, everything okay? I have a question. Are your feet hurting because your shoes look small? The kid's shoes were small, toes crunched up in there. How can the kid pay attention if his shoes don't fit? Or if the kid's hungry? Or if the kid hadn't showered or the kid doesn't have hair gel? And so we are able to apply that to 2020 of, hey, if I can provide a mom a pair of shoes to give to her kid and still feel like a mom, because in a time to where the pandemic is outside of our control, what can we control? What do we have power over? Your household. Well, if you still want to still feel like you're contributing as a parent, yes, we will get you some hair ties so your kid can still put her hair up in a ponytail. We'll give you some shoes so when your kid says, "Mom, I need new shoes," mom's been laid off because COVID. We want to still give you that power to be a parent because that kid is gonna see that, right? Not necessarily like I'm not gonna use drugs. No, it's the ability of bringing families together. We want to provide the basic essentials for you because at a time where you do not have control of the world, you have control of what's in front of you, your household, and so we were able to do that. And man, Jonathan and I, we got in the car and we did the deliveries ourselves. I mean, our whole shop, it was kind of like, and you see from in history where, the cheese factory started making, shoes for the military, we don't make cheese. We didn't, but our facility was made for having prevention specialists go into the schools. Well, now you came into our facility and we had bars of soap. We had shampoo, everywhere. Our prevention specialists
It's like coming to CVS.
our prevention specialists who are trained and certified to go into the schools, work with the kids with prevention education. They were on the phone getting information. Hey, what do you need? You requested services. Just they were able to adapt to the problem. And then Jonathan and I, we both loaded up our cars and we did deliveries. That was probably the scary part because it was, May of 2020. It was the uncertainty of like, dude, what is COVID? Like you hear all these things, but we know that people are hurting. We know that people need this stuff. And so we went all over the zip codes of Lubbock, delivering items to people in need. So, the stories we heard, it was me being a community guy. It was just like, man, how can I help you? And that I think that was the awesome part during COVID was being able to adapt. An audible was thrown, we adapted, we went with it, we just rolled with it. But that comes, I think, with the passion that everybody has to keep things going. Just don't stop. So
Passion and mindset too. You brought up cheese. I know you said you don't make cheese, but that book, Who Moved My Cheese?
There you go. Yeah.
You got to just get after it. Keep after it. Things are always going to be changing. Yeah. And all right. So y'all love working with youth. And the older I get, the more I need to listen to other folks. Any tips, words of wisdom or advice for the listeners, prevention professionals, when it comes to engaging youth, working with youth, hanging out and just having fun with youth?
So one, you can only give what you got. You know what I mean? I think sometimes and this can happen from some very well-educated folks, well-meaning, but well-educated folks, or folks who, you know, those are young people. I have no way to connect to them. Well, it's kind, my mom's dad. He was from Indiana. My dad's dad was from Massachusetts. Massachusetts. I mean, how did you connect with your grandparents? How did your grandparents connect with you? And so sometimes folks need to realize it's not that complicated. The person across from you is a human being. Are they going to think what you're doing is corny? Yes, but that's okay. Me and Adam, they come in our classroom, they're going to get quotes from 1980s, 1970s movies, music, stuff from the 90s and 2000s. And some people may be like, those kids have no idea what you're talking about. That's okay. I'm going to tell them. I'm going to pull them in and have them interested in learning something they don't know, because you'll find anybody who works with kids, if you can get a kid interested in something they don't know, and you'd be surprised once you can get them past that nervousness, man, I don't want to do this, they'll get after it. And so sometimes I think people overthink it. And I think it's, how did people connect with you? And just try. You're going to make mistakes. It took me a while. I'm from California, so it took me a while. The first time I'd been in a high school again was when I started in prevention, and my high school was completely different. These are way different kids than the ones I grew up with. So it takes a little bit, but once you get the ebb and flow and you realize, you know what, I'm just going to be me and I'm going to just go with it. And some kids ain't going to like you, and it's just like people. Some people ain't going to like you. So it's just, one, go after it. Two, don't be, it's okay to be that fun, goofy counselor, like camp counselor that we can all think of. It's okay, it's, for some of our more mature, older folks, be that person. You know what I mean? Because everybody, I know where I grew up, there was always that older neighbor in the street, on the neighborhood, that you looked up to. Even though you guys had nothing really connecting you other than growing up in that neighborhood. And I think kids crave that. Sometimes, I mean, you'll be shocked how much they really do want to connect with older folks, especially some of the kids we work with. They don't have another male in the house, or they may not have another older, they may not know their grandparents. You know what I mean? And that takes a lot from a kid, and people don't realize. I mean, there's a reason, some of the kids we work with, like we had a kid one time, he was suspended. The cops were looking for him on campus because he was suspended and supposed to be at home, but he came on campus to hang out with people. And our kids will get in trouble and still come to school because there's something about that environment that actually feels safe. So you create that. You work towards that with those kids. Be that safe person in their life.
So, to share a war story from my Iraq deployment, one of the things that we learned to be very effective was a GOT method, meaning get out of the truck. The more we got out of the truck and talked to the local Iraqi civilians, we built rapport with them. We built relationships. And then all of a sudden they realized, hey, these guys aren't so bad. They're actually here to help us. So then they started to help us help them. It was a beautiful thing. And so then I applied that GOT method when I was a campus police officer. Get out of the car, get out, walk around, talk to the students. And I'll tell you what, it made my job pretty daggone enjoyable to just get out and have just conversations. But it did lead to me wearing a 3-piece suit and a blue school spirit wig, acting a fool all across campus in the name of the EIU Mayhem Prevention Team.
Somebody's got to do it.
Right. But you're talking about being that goofball. I mean, I'm a cop. They're not going to take me serious if I'm rappelling off of a building wearing a blue wig, right? No, it made for some wonderful conversations. And then in that conversation came connection. And we were able to actually talk about prevention. That's when I started to use motivational interviewing out on patrol. So yeah, get out of the office, y'all, and don't overthink it. That's my summary of what you said, Jonathan. Just go talk to him.
I think of the Indiana Jones
Also,
quote.
bring food if you can. Kids like to eat.
They do. I think of the Indiana Jones quote, right, where he's always like, you want to be a good, scientist, get out of the library. Kind of, it goes along with what you're saying. And I would say, if there was advice, be yourself. Just be yourself. That's all you can be, because we've had, examples of people that, might have not grown up in the same neighborhood as some of these kids, and they try to be something that they're not, and you can spot that and say, you know what, take ownership if, where you grew up, because they're going to respect that. Even if you didn't grow up in the same culture or neighborhood, you're still yourself. You're still being 100. And that's always been my motto, like if it's going to be cheesy, I'm King Cheese, and I want to be goofy because that's confidence. Right. And they will respect that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, Jacqueline, I saw you, I'll second that a couple different times. One of them might have been on loving food. I don't know if that was you love food or, youth do, but
that's how you keep her happy.
All right. What tips and tricks do you have when it comes to working with youth?
Mine kind of falls into some of the things that were already said, which, great minds think alike, but it really is, being your authentic self. And sometimes, depending on the entity that you're at, it can be hard, because one of the biggest things that we stress is, the culture of being who you are and, just embracing that. Like, you want to make sure that you're going into a school site not dressed up in slacks and super nice professional clothes, because that's not what you're really there to do, and they're not going to connect with that. So, just being true to yourself, living out your truth, being honest, and respecting that everyone else is going to live the life that they want to live. And you're just there to provide education, support, knowledge, and let them live their lives. I think that's the advice that I'm going to go with.
I like it. The fellows are nodding as well. We get a little round of applause there. Beautiful.
I'd even like
beautiful.
If it'd be okay, I'd even like that, kind of like something what Jacqueline made with dress code. And this is something we learned last year with some of our kids that we work with, that have been like CPS or foster care. That outfit, your badge, can be absolutely triggering.
Tell me more.
Because sometimes, because I was not worth this class, but Adam, there was a class. Actually, some of our,
I screwed up.
Even for me working at the jail, if I as a counselor, I dress differently than the normal staff there. But you come in with a button-up shirt and nice shoes in some of these schools, well, you look like a probation officer. They connect you to people, CPS, foster care people that may have removed them from their homes. So it's also, a big thing in connecting with these kids is that outfit you need to keep in mind, especially if you're working with kids that are likely to have had those experiences. That outfit, that badge is actually triggering.
Man, that totally, that happened to me at that school. I walked in had a nice button up, some slacks, and I walked in there and I said, "Hello, my name is Adam. I work for Hub City Outreach Center. I also work part-time at a foster placement." Next thing you know it, all the kids are like, "Oh, heck no, my mom told me not to talk to you," and this, and that. And the teacher looked at me. She's like, "Get out." I was like, "See you next week." It was like, I did not see that one coming, right? So next week, man, I show up in my Chuck Taylors, jeans, and a flannel shirt, right? Just like, yeah. So I can agree with John. I just had to share that story because it's true. It happens.
Comes right back to that OJT training y'all were talking about earlier. Right. Those lessons learned. Yeah. Well, y'all got a lot going on. You're growing. You're doing even more, stepping up, scaling that impact that y'all are doing. How can folks keep up to date? How can they get involved? How can they help you help others?
Yeah, so we are, on all the socials. Our Instagram is at Hub City Outreach Center. Facebook, it's Hub City Outreach Center. We don't do a whole lot on YouTube. We did a couple series for National Drug and Alcohol Fact Week a while ago, but we're also on YouTube. We don't have enough followers to have like the nice the URL, but we're Hub City Outreach Center in Lubbock, Texas. You can definitely find us. And then, of course, our website gets maintained pretty frequently, and it's pretty easy to navigate, and that's hubcityoutreachcenter.org.
Now, got podcast listeners all over the globe, and I know there's a nice little network there in even Texas. Are y'all open to partnerships, or how can folks donate or get involved in that manner as well?
Yeah, so we have a donation portal that is on our website. And then you can also text GIVE, the number 2, HCOC to 44321. And you can donate that way. Really super simple.
Beautiful. And listeners, all their social links and the donate links will be in the show notes. And I hope y'all go out and follow them on the social media platforms, because they are awesome people doing awesome things. I want to just close this episode out with a little go around. Would love to hear from each of you. And what would be just one call to action, or one, if you're going to remember one thing from this episode, remember this. What would it be? And we'll start with Adam, then go Jonathan, and finish up with Jacqueline.
Be part of the solution. Whatever that looks like, be part of the solution. Just do something. Even if you feel like you can't, because maybe you have, this much of an education or this much of funding, man, just be part of the solution. However you can find a way, just do it.
Roger that. All right. What do you got for us, Jonathan?
I have two things. So thing number one, remember the person across from you is a human being just like you. Not a subject, not a participant, a human being. And then I would say number two, make the most of any moment you have with those humans. And I say that because, we've worked with kids who've ended up on the news, didn't make it home to their families. And sometimes we can forget that there's a world outside of that classroom that kid's going into, or those adults that you're working with are going into. And so if you got 30 minutes with them, take it the most you can out of those 30 minutes.
All right. I dig it. Miss Jacqueline, what are your parting words for us?
My parting words for all of you awesome listeners would be to get educated and stay educated. Everyone has their life to live, but you got to know your why, and you got to know your limits, and you got to know your support system.
Amazing words of wisdom from all three of y'all. I am not going to add to it because you guys are amazing and you got all the knowledge, not me. I just ask the questions. But keep up the amazing work. Thank you all so much for taking time to chat with me. Truly appreciate each and every one of you and the work you're doing. And I look forward to our paths crossing again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can't wait. Thank you, Dave.
That concludes this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a friend before you leave. And we look forward to seeing you on social media, because prevention is better together. Together, we are stronger.